Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another debate show this afternoon where we're going to be focusing on Barnsley and whether they can keep themselves in the Championship during the 21-22 season. Joining me is my colleague Billy Mulley. How are you getting on this afternoon, Billy?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Looking forward to speaking about Barnsley, a team I've got a lot of respect for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not great going for Barnsley at the minute, but there's plenty to get stuck into all the same. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. So any Barnsley fans joining us, please do get yourselves in the comments. We want to hear from you. And just before we get started, anybody watching on YouTube, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future broadcasts. Right, we're going to get straight into it. And Barnsley currently sitting at 23rd in the Championship table. They're 7 points adrift of safety and have won only twice so far this season. Billy, it's been a really poor start to the season, hasn't it, for the Tigers?
Yeah, it makes for dismal reading their form this season. And you sort of look at the Championship and you look at the sort of the top places. You see Fulham, you see Bournemouth there, and you understand why. You look towards the sort of lower regions of the table and you see sort of Peterborough and Cardiff, and you can understand why. But Barnsley are a team that I don't really understand what's gone wrong for them. Obviously, sort of managerial changes and it took quite long for performances to start going under Shop. I think when it came to the end of his tenancy, I think that's when we started to see a fair few good, well, I say good, but good enough performances from Barnsley. I think, now they're under Asbaghi. I think the performances are going to continue to improve. I look at their squad and I think it's not much different to the team that achieved 5th place last year. So when you think of what's gone wrong this season, it's quite hard to put your finger on it, especially when you see them with 2 wins to their name, which is just absurd to me, because when I have seen them play and just sort of reading reports and sort of listening to fans as well, it doesn't seem as bad as the situation actually is, if that makes sense. So yeah, 7 points from safety, not in the best of positions at all. But yeah, it's a big surprise to me given the quality they do possess and what they've shown in recent seasons.
Yeah, I think we maybe underestimated a little bit last season just how important the likes of Alex Moat and Daryl DK were. Of course, as you touched on there, there's been plenty of change in the dugout. Valérien Esmel left, of course, in the summer and was replaced by Marcus Shop. Now we've got Poya Asbaghi in charge at Oakwell, and he's had quite a tough start. You know, in the 5 games that he's officially taken charge of, there's been 2 defeats and 3 draws. What have you made of Barnsley since Asbaghi's taken over then, Billy?
Yeah, again, it seems that the stats don't make for good reading there, but I've been quite impressed with what I've seen from Asbaghi. I think he stopped sort of the rot in terms of completely a negative feeling around Oakwell. Performances have improved, I do feel. That they fought well against West Brom, perhaps didn't create the chances that they should have, and I think that's been a key problem this season, that sort of creativity and cutting edge. I think that's what they've been missing a little bit. But Asbaghi, I think he's a manager, again, that's project-based. He's a young, progressive manager who's going to have a good managerial career. I think it's just an element of patience. And even if Barnsley were to go down this season, I think you could be quite confident with a bit of time that Asbaghi can turn things around and create a better feeling and a sense of positivity around the club. But at the moment, yeah, they're only 7 points from safety, and that's the key thing here. The fact that they're still within contention of staying up this season, and there's 23 games left this season. So you got to think that they've got every chance of stopping this run of form and going on some sort of winning run. And I think they'll also be a little bit boosted by what happened the season before last, where they did escape relegation, and they were brilliant during that run as well. The teams they did beat and the performances they put in, they completely transformed things. So Barnsley are a team that can do these kind of things, and that's why I don't think you could ever bet against them.
Absolutely, and I think you're right there in saying that Asbaghi is a very Barnsley manager, as you say, with how progressive he is, and it's a project, you know, rather than just a short-term fix to get them over the line. I watched them live not too long ago against Huddersfield in their 1-1 draw. They came from behind, thanks to Carlton Morris's goal to snatch a point in that Yorkshire derby. And actually, the performance was pretty good there. They struggled a little bit in front of goal and didn't test Lee Nichols as much as they maybe liked, but I maybe felt that it was quite a similar performance to the one they put in on Friday against West Brom in the goalless draw. What did you make of Friday night's performance against a good side like West Brom?
Yeah, well, as you say, West Brom have sort of slowly turned the corner in recent weeks. In terms of their performances and results, it looks like they were climbing up the division and starting to trouble the top two places. A trip to Oakwell would have been what most West Brom fans would have been hoping for in terms of probably what they would consider one of the easiest games of the season at the moment. But it wasn't like that at all. I think what we saw from Barnsley, they battled well, they kept possession well in spells. Of course, they didn't have that cutting edge, and that's what I said earlier. I think that's sort of a big problem at the moment. And on the balance of play, you look back at the highlights, and West Brom did have the better chances. But to say that West Brom deserved all 3 points, I think that's not quite right here, and that's something that Asbaghi has to take credit for. They've got big games coming up. I won't go too much into it because I'm sure we'll touch on them in a little bit. But yeah, I think they can take great confidence from that. And in terms of how they competed against a side that obviously has a much bigger budget than them, they've sort of taken Valerian Ismail and Alex Moe out of them. So there's sort of that feeling of negativity towards them in that respect. But they've competed well against a really, really good side. I know West Brom have suffered with inconsistencies this season, but generally their performances have been, they've dominated teams. So to come away and not really be dominated by a West Brom team with some of the stars they do have in that side, I think they can be quite positive about it.
Absolutely. Sort of touched on in that segment, one key shortcoming for Barnsley this season has been their goal scoring. They've only scored 15 times all season and just 2 times since Asbaghi has taken charge. I mean, frankly, if Barnsley don't sort this area out, Billy, then they're not going to survive, are they?
Yeah, quite simply put. Yeah, that's the big issue at the moment. 15 goals in 23, which is by far the worst in the division. As I said before, it's caught me by surprise in terms of the players they do possess still, the squad they have, the competition that we thought that would be there at the start of the season, with players like Iseka and Alare coming in, haven't really had the effect that Barnsley fans would have hoped. Carlton Morris getting into the groove of things, I think he could be big in the second half of the season. And Crawley Woodrow, another player that I think is a very good player at this level, but just hasn't been able to get on the score sheet frequently enough this season. You also think about sort of the creative players that they've got in the squad, and last year I think Callum Britton was a massive part of why they were so successful going forward. Callum Stiles as well was on the left as a left wing back and in central midfielder, a player that can impact games and completely change games as well. We've seen that with a few of his performances last year, and that was rewarded with a Young Player of the Year award. So they do have that squad. They do have the players in forward position and even a little bit behind the forward positions to score goals and create things. It's just very, very strange that it's not happening at the moment. And I think that key theme has been present all season, which is the worrying thing, that they haven't been able to address it. Because I remember at the start of the season when they played Luton, I remember being really impressed with their approach play and the way they kept the ball. And I think we only had 25 to 30% possession that day because they kept the ball so well and worked it well. But once they got into the final third, they just lacked that little bit of quality that we did see last season. And that's the key difference for me.
Yeah, before we move on to Crawley Woodrow, I guess just sort of heading into January last season, we saw Daryl DK go in at Oakwell and score 9 goals during the second half of the season, which helped direct Barnsley into the playoffs. I think, nobody's sitting here and saying that they could go out and get DK again, but a signing of that ilk wouldn't go amiss in January, would it? Just sort of somebody to come in and hit sort of 7 or 8 goals just to get Barnsley moving up the table.
It would be unreal if they found another Daryl DK again, because the impact he had was unbelievable. Incredible player that will go on to brilliant things. But yeah, as you said, he it wasn't just him as well. As we said, I think his arrival also sparked Woodrow not into life because he was already enjoying a good season, but sort of the link up those two had, and sort of the it seemed that DK was the finishing piece. He was that player who had the cutting edge and the ability to score goals, and I think that's why they were successful. You sort of look at the market now. Would they sort of delve into League One, a player who's in quite good form there? Uche Piazzu as well as another player that hasn't been linked, but it could be a good player to go to Oakwell and score a few goals. I still think he's a championship level striker, even though he's not really wanted at Middlesbrough at the moment. So I think there are options going into the window, and I'm sure they'll be assessing their options. And should they get someone who can have sort of a DK-esque mark at Barnsley, then I'm sure they could get out the rot they're currently in.
Absolutely. And one man that we know that they can rely on to get them out of a rot is Cauley Woodrow. He scored 4 of the 15 goals that they've got in the Championship this season. But interestingly, he's only got 1 in his last 12 appearances. I think it's safe to say that he's not quite hitting the levels he has previously than Woodrow. He's hit double figures in each of the last 2 seasons in the Championship. It's probably crucial for Barnsley that Woodrow does so again to give them any hope of surviving, isn't it, Billy?
Definitely, yeah. Woodrow's a player I'm really been keen on. I know sort of came through the Luton ranks, went on to Fulham, and so I've always had that sort of eye to watch him. And yeah, I've always wanted Luton to sign him again. But yeah, I don't think that's a deal that would ever be possible. Well, at the moment at least. But he's a very good player still. I know he hasn't had he hasn't proven himself to be as crucial goal scorer this season as he has been in recent seasons, but he still has that ability, he still has that spark in glimpses. That you think back to his free kick against Stoke, which just shows the ability he does have, one of the sweetest strikes you'll see all season. But I think a lot of this does again come down to this sort of creativity, and he's not getting the right service at the moment. I think that's going to play a key part. So I think as well as sort of focusing in the forward areas come January, I think addressing this sort of attacking midfielder void and player that can link up with a player like Cauley Woodrow or whoever will be starting up front come the start of January, I think that's where they'll need to focus their attentions on.
You've mentioned there that you'd like Luton to sign Cauley Woodrow. They might not get the chance because there's quite a few reports floating around that West Brom are interested in signing Woodrow, which is a little surprise given he worked with Valérien Ismaël last season at Oakwell. That it'd be a big blow to lose him in January, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be massive because I think, as I said before, if they did get that creative type of player, then I think Woodrow will start scoring goals again and he could become crucial. I think in terms of, we think of Barnsley, they're a young squad. They've got a lot of players with a lot of talent, but then Woodrow's sort of in the middle of that, where he was he's obviously got all this talent, but he's also taken on sort of a leadership role quite early on in his Barnsley career at just 26. So I think in that respect, he would be crucial, not just because of the goals and the impact he has on matches, but in terms of the confidence levels within the squad. I think he'd definitely be a big blow. And to see West Brom interested, yes, you can see why. But West Brom, with their recruitment of forwards, it's just quite strange at the moment. You think they brought Jordan Hugo in, and they just seem to be linked with loads of strikers. West Brom, they just can't find that winning formula. But obviously, Woodrow's a player that Valérien Ismaël can trust. I think the working relationship that he showed with Alex Mowatt as well makes him another reason as to why he would be a good signing. Woodrow is a player that I think is a quality championship option, but whether he can cut it at a championship club that are looking for promotion for next season, I'm not too sure if that would be the right move for him.
No, maybe not, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on heading into January. All right, Barnsley's fixture on Boxing Day against Stoke City is postponed, so we're going to look just a little bit further ahead to their fixtures either side of New Year. We've got Blackburn and Nottingham Forest, hopefully to come either side of 2021 turning 2022. Billy, they couldn't really face two more informed sides if they tried, could they?
That's the thing. It's Blackburn and Nottingham Forest, and you think of everything that's going on in the world at the moment with COVID and everything. You want these games to go ahead, but the difficulty of these two matches are probably up there with two of the most difficult at the moment. Blackburn have won 5 in a row, I think, without conceding any when thinking about it as well. So they have been absolutely on fire in recent weeks. So we speak a lot about their attacking firepower with Kadra now coming into form. Ben Brereton Diaz, of course, has been brilliant all season. Tyrese Dolan as well is just another complete threat. But then I think their defensive record goes a little bit under the radar. So that they are a side that have really got it all at the moment, and be no surprise for them to continue their sort of surge up the table and trouble in the automatic promotion places as they are. And then Nottingham Forest, a team that just don't lose under Steve Cooper. Just one game, I think it is, in 16 that they've lost under Steve Cooper, and that was a weird 4-0 loss when you think back to it. So yeah, two very, very good teams at the moment. And yeah, as you said before, they're probably the two most informed teams in the division. But as we've seen from the Championship in recent seasons, the second tier just defies logic sometimes. And I think that's what Barnsley will be hanging on to and hoping for in terms of getting a victory.
Absolutely. They're still waiting for that first victory under Asbaghi. Do you give them much chance of doing it then over this sort of festive schedule?
In terms of the festive schedule, I think it'll be very, very difficult. If they can manage to win one of those games, I think it'll be a very good achievement given the sort of state of play at the moment. But I think given the nature of who Asbaghi is and sort of that he's young and progressive nature, I think that Barnsley might be able to continue slowly building on, start picking up wins gradually, and sort of come April, May, I think they might try and mount a serious survival push again. I think that the problem I do see is that the two teams that are currently just outside the relegation zone, Reading and Cardiff, I think it is, I think that they're going to keep on progressing. I can't see Cardiff staying where they are for too long. I think Reading, once they get their players back from injury, they'll continue to progress. I can see them finishing above Peterborough because purely by the squad and sort of the recent performances at Barnsley suggest that they can go on and sort of keep going and keep on this run and progress past Peterborough. And then you think of Derby as well, a side that just very unfortunate with their points deductions, because that's ultimately what's going to be the difference in the division. So will another team that are currently sitting around sort of the mid-table region drop into the relegation mix and Barnsley benefit from some good form? I think that's what they'll be hanging on to.
Yeah, I mean, the Championship being the Championship, it's very, very early to be making predictions on whether Barnsley are going to stay up. But as you mentioned there, a combination of sort of the sides that sit above them in the table and just outside the relegation zone, and how they could get stronger during the second half of the season, and given Barnsley's performances so far, and then looking ahead to the fixtures that they've actually got. Because I flicked through the fixtures this morning, and there's not sort of a 3 or 4 game burst that I look at and think could see Barnsley going A, unbeaten there, or B, picking up sort of 7 to 9 points. It's just really difficult. And the more I think about it, the slimmer I think that Barnsley's chances of surviving are actually getting. Billy, do you give them much hope of surviving? Do you think that they're going to stay up this season?
I think there is. My answer would be I don't see them staying up. If I was to select 3 relegated teams right now, I would go for Barnsley. But I do think there is scope there for Asbaghi to continue to sort of revitalise the club and create a positive sense around the sort of around the club as well. And what you were saying there about that sort of 3 or 4 game sort of fixture list where it doesn't seem that they'll pick up 7 to 9 points. I think if they do start picking up points now, you can sort of go back through that fixture list, and then you'll start to think, okay, they could start picking up points in this game where you previously didn't think they would. So in that respect, I think that, yeah, it's going to be difficult. We're still at the halfway stage. A lot can change. You think back to Hull 2 seasons ago, they were still top half at this point, and a disastrous second half of the season that made them finish at the bottom of the table. And And as well, Barnsley know what it's like to fight at the bottom of the division and get out of it. They still have the squad there, and should they make a couple of January additions, I think that they'll have every chance and every belief that they could get out of it. But at the moment, I think, all things considered, I do consider Barnsley to be a relegated club at this point.
Absolutely, but this is the Championship, and everything can change. That's why we love the division so much. Right, that concludes this afternoon's debate show and another day on Football League World TV. Thanks to Billy for joining me. Coming up tomorrow, we've got the League Two half-season awards with Ned Holmes. Ned's been running that series, so if you've missed it, please check it out on YouTube and go back and watch them through in case you want to see who's scooped all the awards in the Championship and League One. It's definitely well worth a watch. But until then, take care.